How you going, guys? Want to run through some things from the Easties meetings with you, some nuggets of gold that came out of that, topics that we were talking about. Spent more time on than others as well. So I managed to identify 3 or 4 major points that we talked about there. And one of them was just, I suppose, the value of corporate clients or business clients. They naturally are putting their hands up and saying, I'm a fantastic client, so you should pay more attention to them. They are less price sensitive. They get you to do heaps of work for them. On the negative side or the con side, they quite often want work done straight away, but are so thankful when you do. Like the boss from Melbourne's coming tomorrow. Shit, thought about it last minute. Can you come? Brilliant, massive problem solved for him in an instant. That's why he calls gyms. So they're a good match for gyms as well. And quite often require some flexibility there as well, you know what I mean? But if you tell them something on their property needs doing, they're just going to say, yeah, do it, right? So they're fantastic for additional services as well. So that was one of the things that we spent a bit of time talking about was corporate work and how you attract them, and that tended to be word of mouth as well. And by doing an absolutely spectacular job too. That was the other thing that came up. And then you end up doing their properties and everything, you know, their residential properties. Employees was another thing that came up. So employees, we talked about, one of the big things that came out was the guys that are doing it and doing it well with employees quite often have more than one of them on a casual basis. So they have got flexibility to call 2 of them up for a big job. They've got the flexibility if one of them's sick to get the other one in. And they've got the flexibility of if they call one the night before, oh, listen, man, yeah, the schedule really has gone to crap. And he says, no, you can always go to the other one as well. So 2 was good, but also the casualness was an important thing to reflect workload and quite at the last minute being able to say come out or don't come out. Flexibility was a very big thing, and not every employee is flexible, right? So, but the guys that are very flexible, look for that in an employee if you're doing that as well. Quite often employees came from putting in a fair bit of hard work and putting the message out there that I'm looking for an employee 2 or 3 months before it happens, and then when it does happen, you know, 2 or 3 actually come through, and that's where you get your stock of 2 or 3 people. But as you're talking about the kind of person you want to employ to your friends, family, and associates, you talk about the conditions that would allow for flexibility in that employee. So I'm just looking for someone who's casually, maybe they're semi-retired, maybe they're going to uni. You know, you can start talking to people that are then going to put the word out, and then that you're looking for an employee about what type of employee. Oh, yeah, I know Bill. I think Bill's son's doing that. You should have a chat to him. So that's how it happens, right? So, but it happens through hard work. Don't just go to an employment agency or put an ad in the paper. That's a higher risk way of doing it and not getting the great result. The benefit of having an employee they talked about was, actually one guy brought it up very heavily. It said, it just gives me more time. I'm doing more additional services now because I get the lad or the 2 lads or whatever it is to do the job, and then I'm writing out the invoice for the client, handing it to the client 5 minutes before they finish, and we can talk about it for 5 minutes about their yard. So more time to talk to the clients by having an employee who does the grunt and you do the, you know, the smooth stuff, right? Talking to the customer. So that was something that came about additional services, yeah? What else did we talk about? It got brought up that it's a bit easier on the body as well, right? So for, from a young lad point of view, probably, you know, taking the workload off, or even just, you know, sharing the workload actually takes the hard work gets shared too, you know? So, time for actually talk about that casual, flexible, last minute. It takes balls to put on an employee, yeah? So that's something else that did come up. Most guys are nervous before putting on an employee. Shane, should I put on an employee? Should I put on an employee? And then based on what we've been talking about now, I would say if you're thinking about it, you should do it because you've got the knowledge and they're working out very successful by hopefully the advice that's getting fed back, you know, it's making it better. I think go back 7 years ago, probably people had a bit of a worse track record potentially with employees. But it sounds like they're getting it right, but it does take balls. Everyone's nervous about it. What's it going to mean? That kind of thing. But if it's on a casual basis, you can cut it off whenever you want. You don't really have anything to be nervous about. You just got to put the effort in to start talking about it with your friends and thinking about it. Yeah? Cool. No promise of ongoing employment with casuals, right, either. So that's important. So you're not really committing. You don't have to be that nervous. Another thing that came up, probably because I did that other video about risky jobs, NDIS, irrigation. Irrigation came up, and of course, a few horror stories associated with irrigation came through, which I haven't seen before, which is good, because our experience with irrigation always was run the other way, because it's very difficult, time consuming. The customer didn't want to pay for it. The expectations, quite often were incapable with flow rates we couldn't do, and a lot of time, effort. So we used to run the other way from it, and then if it stuffs up, the liability. But I've done the video on that, so I won't talk anymore. But guys did talk about the rate for third parties doing irrigation on the positive side, away from the horror stories, that the money is very good, and maybe we're even undercharging. So from third party suppliers, they're charging a hell of a lot. So specialists in irrigation, outside of gyms, I'd probably say, someone quoted some rate and everyone went, wow, really? They're charging that much just for a call out fee? So if you're going to get involved in irrigation, make sure it's worth your while. Yeah. And make sure you maybe do a bit of a test of the industry to see what they would charge for it. And they normally tend to be our suppliers of products anyway, that are the specialists. Ask them how much to come out and see one of your clients. And then if you can do it without them coming out, then you can charge that amount, maybe. Okay, so irrigation, big money, but it's a specialist field. You've got to go into it with your eyes open, I'm sure. Most guys only do irrigation for regulars. Yeah, that's the other thing. They don't take on a new one. And absolutely, any new job, new customer is a risk, particularly first time meeting you. It can be painful, and customers tend to be unhappy with it. Yeah, so that was some of the things that came up. More stuff. One of the really important things that actually came up organically in the discussion was one of the guys was saying, which was great. He was sharing. He's like, in the middle of it, he goes, I never lose any quotes. Shocked about what someone else was saying about how many quotes they expect to win, I think. And he goes, I win all my quotes. And it was like, well, then I think the whole group as a whole went, well, mate, you're too cheap, right? So it's actually a proper term in marketing economics, whatever you want to call it, but it's called price rejection. You must have your price rejected in order to know what level it's at. Otherwise you don't ever know if you're too cheap. How much too cheap are you? You never know. You get 100%. But if you know that you lose 15% based on price, or whatever it is based on price, then you know where your mark is if you want to keep it around that 15%. So non-reject selling is too cheap. Yeah, you need rejection in order to go over there. Non-resistant selling, they call it. Yeah, non-resistant selling. Now there was also talking about price, the category of price. We're up to D, item D, that got raised and talked about. Price always comes up. One of the fellas there just put all his prices up by 10%. And just kept on talking about a few other things. And someone said, you just put it all up by 10%. How did you do it? And we've spoken about how you put your prices up, but that's not that now. It's not really the time for it. It's more like before spring, of course. But he was like, no, I just put all my non-regular related quoting I put up by 10%. And it's just like, oh yeah, you can do that piece of cake, can't you? You can do that at any time. Just your quoting book, your system for quoting, whatever it may be in your head or in your book, just put that up by 10%. So, and because our income comes majoritarily from additional services, particularly probably at this time of the year, let's face it, then, man, it can have a big influence and it costs you nothing. No thought process, no customer having to think about whether they accept your price or don't accept your new price, although 99% of the time they do. But there's none of that. It's just for additional services, which make up more than 50% of our income. So 50% of the job is a piece of cake. Just do it now, right? So that was really an interesting conversation, because I never really thought how easy it can be to raise 50% of your income by 10% by notifying no one and just starting to quote at that price. Cool. Cool. Okay. Yeah. No, that was talking about that. That's good. That was a biggie. E. Guys were talking about, we're obviously talking about how busy you are at the moment. And one comment came up, I like to be quiet at this time of the year. And I'm quite happy to be quiet, a bit quieter, move at a slower pace at this time of the year. So me too, right? Unfortunately, I'm not at the moment, but that's all about silos, and there is an email, with me talking about silos enough, right? But and it's too late for silos now anyway, right? Because it's not raining, it's not harvest time, and so you can't build up your silo at the moment. So, but I like being quiet at this time. Really reflected your need for preparation, man, for this time of the year. So the pressure is off. I like whatever comes my way, and when the pressure's off, you know what? Life's a bit easier, I can tell you, and things fall into place without as much effort, which is what you want as well. Managing holidays and work levels was something that was brought up as, how you doing this month? Well, a lot of guys describe themselves coming back from the break, both in terms of workload and also in terms of what it meant for the body as well after having a break for a period of time as well. So getting back into it physically, getting back into it probably mentally as well, maybe with a few more kilos on too, right? But also getting back to it in terms of your scheduling. Yeah, so that was spoken about as something that does require a bit of thought and reflection, and reflecting for next year, how to do it better. What else have I got here for you? One fella mentioned this before about females being involved in the business and how much they just talk to the customers and how that results in additional services. That did come up again. Managing fatigue, obviously coming back from that holiday break as well, and the heat. You come back from that holiday break and it's quite often hot. So that was something that got talked about as well. We talked about the 4-day work week. Never book anything on the Friday or whatever day it is, and just save that for additional services. And we talked about, actually at the meeting down north, we talked about 3.5, well, push it to 3.5 days of the week. Only do 3.5 days of the week and book. Make sure you're booking a day and a half of extras each week. Because guess what? If you're hungry, I've got to fill a day or a day and a half. If you've got whatever you've got to fill, you should be hungry to do. So if you're doing 1 day of the week and filling it with extras very easily, you should try and push yourself and make yourself hungry by make believe, by saying, I must book a week, a day and a half that I've got to fill now. So shit, I better really look for additional services. And when you're hungry, you fill it. So that's the way it works, man. Put the carrot out there and then you do it. That's human motivation. That's the way we get things done as human beings. Controlling the lawn and water cycle times, obviously with the heat if they're watering a lot, but that did raise, and then you saying to them don't water so much, or turning them down, turning them up, the sprinklers, whatever it is, the watering system that you're doing, being in control of that, being in control of that person's yard. That was a big thing that seemed to come through from the guys that had thought about it. I was going to say smarter guys, but it's just guys really that have thought about it and really engaged in controlling their lawn, so that they don't have at the springtime everyone come into 2 weeks and you've got no time to meet new clients. So controlling the lawn to suit the cycle time that you want. That's a good one. But engage with it, man. You can control something to do with that by the way you do it, the amount of poison you put down, whatever you do. Control the yard to suit your cycle. That's your job. Don't let the customer control it, or preferably don't. That's it, guys, I reckon. Cool. So listen, you can see nuggets of gold, man. Come to meetings, right? Because this is just me. You'll get other stuff, and you're working groups, small groups afterwards, based on things that you've heard people say. Oh, mate, can you just tell me a little bit more about how you were describing how you did that hedge and what you charged for it and what was great this month? The thing that was great this month. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that for me over a beer? And I saw that at every meeting I went to. Guys went away into their smaller groups, and I went around, talked to them all in their smaller groups if they had questions, but tended to form groups around sometimes location, sometimes guys that are working together, sometimes guys wanting to drive their business in a certain direction, then have an interest and meet up. And, magic happens. Cool. Okay, guys, listen, have a great week. Certainly plenty of content coming out. Joey is with us. I'll say that now. I did do this in a text message. Joey's my personal assistant, so you may get a call from Joey, and Joey will take my messages if I can't get to the phone. But it's all about supporting me as I lift up, I suppose, into a bit more communication, and things like that, creating value. So Judith is no longer with us. I say that as well. She didn't come back from her Christmas holidays. She had a change in plans, so for retirement. So basically retirement. So we're training Joey up to be patient with him, right, as he learns the way we're doing things. But mainly, it's a lot of the stuff we've got to deal with anyway, and we put it on our task list. And me and Louisa or Rhett are giving you a call. Joey's there just as backup messaging more than anything else, and I will get him to do specific tasks for me as well. Yeah, cool guys. Okay, have a great week. Good on you. Bye.